The midday sun beat down on the sprawling campus of the University of Ghana, turning the dusty pavements into shimmering ribbons of heat. Kofi Mensah leaned lazily against the faded concrete pillar outside the business school lecture hall, his backpack slung carelessly over one shoulder. The distant hum of Professor Owusu's lecture buzzed faintly from within, a monotonous drone that Kofi had no intention of enduring today. His eyes gleamed with mischief, a grin slowly spreading across his face as he watched his friends gather around. Yoboteng, ever the voice of reason, frowned as he checked the time on his battered wristwatch. Kofi, you can't be serious. Skipping Owusu's lecture again. That man's got a vendetta against students like you. He'll hit us with one of his surprise quizzes. Kofi shrugged, unfazed. Your life isn't measured by how many lectures you sit through. It's about moments, unforgettable ones. And tonight, that's one of them. Selom Zigbody arrived just in time to catch Kofi's last words, jingling his car keys with a self-satisfied smirk. And trust me, boys and lady, he added with a wink at ESI, tonight will be legendary. My cousins got us on the VIP list for Club Onyx. Not just any list, the exclusive one. ESI Thompson crossed her arms, her sharp eyes narrowing. Exclusive how? Last time you promised exclusive, we spent half the night outside, arguing with a bouncer who didn't know your cousin's name. Kwame Ado laughed, slapping Selom on the back. But we still got in, didn't we? And it was worth it. Come on, ESI, admit it, you had fun. ESI rolled her eyes, but a smile crept onto her face. Maybe. But if anything goes sideways tonight, I'm blaming all of you. That sealed it. Their escape plan was simple: ditch the afternoon lectures, head back to Selom's apartment to get ready, and hit Club Onyx as the city came alive under the neon glow of Accra's nightlife. By nightfall, Accra had transformed. The chaotic hum of daytime traffic faded into the rhythmic pulse of distant music, flashing lights, and the electric buzz of anticipation. Selom's sleek black Mercedes cruised through the streets, its windows down, blasting Afrobeats that vibrated through their seats. The city smelled of roasted kelewele, ocean breeze, and the faint metallic tan of ambition. Club Onyx loomed ahead, a towering structure of glass and LED lights, its entrance guarded by bouncers with arms as thick as tree trunks. The line stretched around the block, a sea of glittering outfits and restless energy. But Selom, with his signature arrogance, strode past the crowd, flashing a grin and dropping his cousin's name like it was a VIP badge. The velvet rope parted. They were in. Inside, the club was another universe. Strobe lights painted the walls in shades of purple and blue, casting fleeting shadows over the crowd. The bass thumped like a second heartbeat, syncing with Kofi's growing excitement. They navigated through waves of dancers, past the crowded bar, until Selom's cousin, a lanky man with too much cologne and a gold chain that gleamed under the lights, waved them over to the VIP section. Drinks flowed freely. Laughter echoed. The night blurred into a haze of music, flashing lights, and fleeting moments. But curiosity has a way of ruining perfect nights. Kofi, slightly tipsy and fueled by adrenaline, wandered away from the group, drawn toward a dimly lit corridor behind the VIP lounge. A door, slightly ajar, caught his attention. Voices filtered through, but angry, hushed, tense. Kofi's curiosity got the better of him. Peering through the gap, he saw two men in heated conversation. One of them was unmistakable, Honorable Kwaku Sefo, a powerful politician whose face was plastered across billboards during election season. The other man was unfamiliar, sweating profusely as he argued. The tension was palpable. Then, without warning, a flash. A gunshot, muffled by the thick walls but unmistakable. The unknown man collapsed, blood pooling around him. Kofi stumbled back, his heart racing, breath shallow. He turned, bumping straight into Yor and ESI, who had followed him. Their expressions shifted from confusion to horror as they registered the fear on Kofi's face. "We need to go," Kofi whispered, his voice trembling. "Now." But it was too late. From the shadows, Honorable Kwakusefo's cold, calculating eyes met Kofi's. In that brief moment, an unspoken message passed between them, a silent promise of danger. The escape plan had just become a survival plan. Kofi's heart raced like a war drum, pounding against his ribcage with a force that made it hard to breathe. His legs felt rooted to the ground, but his mind screamed for him to move. Honorable Kwakusefo's cold gaze bore into him, sharp and unforgiving, as if trying to carve his face into memory. The polished man in the tailored suit didn't flinch, not even after pulling the trigger moments earlier. "Go," Kofi hissed, shoving Yor and ESI with trembling hands. His voice was low, urgent, but the panic beneath it was undeniable. ESI snapped out of her daze first. She grabbed Kofi's arm, pulling him with surprising strength. "Move," she barked, her voice cutting through the haze of fear clouding his mind. They darted back through the dim corridor, weaving between shadowy corners and intoxicated partygoers oblivious to the nightmare unfolding in their midst. The bass from the DJ's set pounded in time with Kofi's pulse, masking their frantic footsteps. The strobe lights cast fleeting images of their terrified faces, fragmented like pieces of a broken mirror. Silom and Kwame were still in the VIP lounge, laughing over overpriced cocktails, unaware of the storm about to hit them. Kofi lunged at Silom, grabbing him by the collar and yanking him to his feet. "What the hell, Kofi?" Silom protested, nearly spilling his drink. "No time." Kofi snapped, his wide eyes silencing any further questions. "We need to leave. Now." Kwame's grin faded as he registered Kofi's trembling hands and the fear etched into Yor and ESI's faces. He dropped his glass, the shattering sound lost in the thumping music. Without another word, they moved. Navigating through the crowd felt like swimming against a riptide. People danced, laughed, oblivious to the danger lurking just beyond the flashing lights. Kofi's breath came in short gasps as they pushed past bodies slick with sweat, ignoring curses and protest. They burst out of Club Onyx into the humid Accra night, the cool air slapping their faces like a wake-up call. The street was alive with the usual chaos, street vendors hawking grilled meat, taxis honking impatiently, neon signs flickering overhead. But to Kofi, everything felt distant, muted beneath the roar of adrenaline in his ears. Silom fumbled with his car keys, his hands shaking. "What the hell is going on, Kofi?" he demanded, his cocky demeanor gone, replaced by genuine fear. "No time to explain," Kofi barked, glancing over his shoulder. His eyes caught movement, a shadow slipping from the club's entrance. Not just one. Two. No, 3 men. Dressed sharply, but their eyes were cold, scanning the street with little intent. "They're coming," Yor whispered, his voice a mere breath. Silom's car door finally clicked open. They piled in, Kofi slamming the door shut just as Silom started the engine with trembling fingers. The tires screeched against the asphalt as they peeled away from the cab, hearts pounding, breaths ragged. "Who were those men?" Kwame asked from the back seat, his usual humor nowhere to be found. Kofi stared straight ahead, jaw clenched. "We saw something we weren't supposed to." Silom glanced in the rearview mirror, his face pale. "What did you see, Kofi?" "A man being murdered," Kofi replied quietly. "By Honorable Kwakusefo." Silence filled the car, heavier than any words could be. Silom cursed under his breath, gripping the steering wheel tighter. "You mean the Honorable Kwakusefo? The Minister of State?" "Yes," Kofi whispered. Yor looked out the rear window. Headlights appeared, weaving aggressively through traffic. The same sleek black SUV they'd seen parked outside the club. "They are following us," Yor muttered, his voice tight. Selom's knuckles whitened as he pressed harder on the accelerator, weaving through the bustling across streets. But the SUV stayed on them, relentlessly. "They are not going to stop," ESI whispered, her voice a mixture of fear and realization. Kofi's jaw tightened. "Neither are we." The chase had begun. Selom's car shot down the bustling streets of Accra like a bullet, the sleek Mercedes weaving between taxis, trotro buses, and unsuspecting pedestrians. The night's humidity clung to the windows, blurring the kaleidoscope of neon signs, streetlights, and flashing billboards that painted the city's restless heart. But none of it mattered, not the vibrant nightlife, not the honking horns, not even the distant sound of music spilling from clubs. What mattered was the black SUV behind them, its headlights glaring like the eyes of a predator locked onto its prey. "They are still on us," Yo shouted from the back seat, twisting to get a better look. His breath came in short, sharp bursts, fogging up the glass. Kofi clenched his fist, leaning forward from the passenger seat. "Selom, step on it." "I am stepping on it." Selom backed, his usual arrogance drowned under layers of fear. His foot slammed the accelerator to the floor, the engine roaring as they sped past red lights, narrowly avoiding a collision with a delivery truck. The driver of the truck screamed curses after them, but Kofi barely heard it over the pounding in his ears. Kwame, usually the joker, was uncharacteristically silent, his wide eyes darting between the speeding vehicles and ESI's clenched jaw. ESI wasn't panicking, not on the surface, at least, but her rigid posture and white-knuckled grip on the door handle betrayed her. "They are gaining on us," Yo whispered, his voice a fragile thread in the thick tension. Kofi's mind raced. Think. Across streets were a maze, but they'd grown up here. They knew the back roads, the shortcuts, the narrow alleys where even death would hesitate to follow. "Take a left," Kofi shouted suddenly. Selom hesitated for a split second, then jerked the wheel hard. The car skidded dangerously, tires screeching against the asphalt as they made the sharp turn onto a narrow street lined with shuttered shops and dim streetlights. The SUV followed, relentless, its tires screeching in response. "They are not giving up," ESI muttered, her eyes locked on the side mirror. Kofi scanned the streets, his heart racing. "Head toward Jamestown. The alleys there are too tight for that SUV." Selom gritted his teeth, nodding. "Hold on." They sped through the labyrinthine streets, dodging potholes, street vendors closing up for the night, and unsuspecting pedestrians who cursed and leaped out of the way. But the SUV stayed close, its driver skilled, relentless, like a shadow that refused to be shaken. Kofi's phone buzzed in his pocket, a vibration that felt absurdly out of place. He pulled it out, an unknown number. His chest tightened. Against his better judgment, he answered. A cold, smooth voice slid through the speaker. "You can't run forever, Kofi Mensah." Kofi's blood turned to ice. "Who is this?" "You already know." The line went dead. Kofi stared at the phone, his breath shallow. "It's him." Selom didn't need to ask who. They rode into Jamestown, where the streets grew narrower and the buildings older, their colonial facades crumbling like the city's forgotten history. Kofi scanned the road ahead, spotting an alley just wide enough for their car. "There," he shouted. Selom didn't hesitate. He swerved sharply into the alley, the car's side mirror scraping against the rough walls with a metallic screech. The SUV tried to follow, but it was too wide. The vehicle screeched to a halt, its tires smoking, unable to squeeze through. Cheers erupted inside the car, relieved, breathless. But the relief was short-lived. The alley was a dead end. Selom slammed on the brakes, the car skidding to a halt. They sat there for a heartbeat, the engine idling, the walls pressing in on both sides like a coffin. Kofi's mind raced. They couldn't back out, not without driving straight into their pursuers. They had to run. Out. Now. Kofi backed, already flinging his door open. They scrambled from the car, sprinting down the narrow alley on foot. Behind them, the SUV's doors burst open, and shadows gave chase, footsteps pounding like war drums on cracked pavement. Kofi didn't look back. There was no time. Their footsteps echoed off the crumbling walls of Jamestown's narrow alleys, mixing with the distant hum of the restless city. Kofi's lungs burned with every ragged breath, but fear pushed him forward, faster than he'd ever run in his life. His mind was a blur, flashes of Honorable Kwakusefo's cold stare, the lifeless body on the VIP floor, the echo of that gunshot still ringing in his ears. Behind them, the sound of pursuit grew louder, heavy boots slapping against concrete, shouts in a language sharp with command. Whoever these men were, they weren't ordinary thugs. They moved with precision, coordination. They were trained. Left. Kofi shouted, his voice hoarse. Selom stumbled slightly as he obeyed, narrowly missing a pile of discarded crates. ESI was right behind Kofi, her face tight with focus, while Yo and Kwame struggled to keep up, their breaths ragged in the humid night air. They darted into a maze of back streets, dark, unfamiliar. The towering colonial buildings of Jamestown loomed like silent witnesses, their faded walls stained by time and secrets. The alleys twisted and turned, but every corner felt like a trap, every shadow a threat. Kwame tripped over a loose cobblestone, crashing to the ground with a painful grunt. Kofi skidded to a stop, doubling back to haul him up. Get up, Kwame. We don't have time. Kwame winced, clutching his ankle, but Kofi didn't give him a choice. He dragged his friend to his feet, slinging Kwame's arm over his shoulder. ESI was already at Kofi's side, supporting Kwame from the other side. There. Yo pointed ahead, breathless. A faint light flickered from an open doorway, half hidden behind rusted sheets of metal. Without hesitation, they stumbled toward it, slipping inside just as the shadows of their pursuers rounded the corner. Kofi slammed the door shut, pressing his back against it as he struggled to catch his breath. The room was small, dark, filled with the scent of mildew and something metallic. An old warehouse, maybe, long abandoned. Moonlight filtered through broken windows, casting jagged beams across dusty crates and rusted metal scraps. Everyone okay? Kofi whispered, his voice trembling. Kwame groaned, nodding weakly. I'm fine, just twisted my ankle. Selom paced, running his hands through his sweat-soaked hair. This is insane. We are being hunted like animals. By who? You know who, ESI snapped, her sharp eyes narrowing. Honorable Kwakusefa. He's not just a politician, he's something worse. This isn't about politics. It's about power. Control. And we saw something we weren't supposed to. Yo peeked through a crack in the door, his face pale. They are searching. Systematic. They are not leaving until they find us. Panic swelled in Kofi's chest, but he fought it back. He needed to think. To survive. His mind raced through options, none of them good. Selom's phone buzzed suddenly, the sound slicing through the tense silence. He fumbled for it, his hands trembling. An unknown number flashed on the screen. Kofi snatched the phone from Selom's hands and answered, his voice low. What do you want? The same cold voice from before slid through the speaker. Smooth. Unbothered. I don't want anything, Kofi. You do. You want to leave. Your friends want to leave. But you've made that very difficult. Kofi's jaw clenched. We didn't mean to see anything. We are not a threat to you. The man chuckled softly, a sound more chilling than any scream. You were a threat the moment you looked through that door. The line went dead. Kofi stared at the phone, his heart pounding. He turned to his friends, their faces pale in the dim light. "They are not going to stop," he whispered. "Not until we're dead." A heavy silence settled over the group. Then ESI spoke, her voice steady. "Then we don't run anymore. We fight." Kofi met her gaze, something shifting inside him. Fear was still there, yes, but beneath it, something stronger. Determination. They weren't just running for their lives anymore. They were fighting for them. The dawn crept over Accra like a reluctant witness, its pale light casting long shadows across the city still shrouded in the aftermath of the night's chaos. The streets were quieter now, save for the distant hum of early commuters and the faint echoes of a city that never truly slept. But for Kofi and his friends, this dawn wasn't a symbol of hope. It was the prelude to a reckoning. They stood outside the abandoned shipping yard near Timah Harbor, its rusting containers stacked like silent tombs. The air smelled of salt, metal, and something darker, like the residue of fear lingering long after the fear itself had gone. This was where it would end. It had to. Kofi tightened his grip on the old pistol clutched in his sweaty hand, a relic Yo had managed to secure from a local fixer. It felt heavy, not just with weight but with consequence. He wasn't a killer. None of them were. But survivor had a way of rewriting definitions. "Are you sure about this?" Yo asked quietly, glancing around the desolate yard. Kofi nodded. "We can't run forever. Sepho's reach is everywhere. If we don't end this, we'll never be free." Selom exhaled shakily, checking the crude explosive device they'd cobbled together, a makeshift bomb wired to one of the few drums scattered around the yard. "This is insane," he muttered. "We are university students, not soldiers." ESI's voice was still. "We weren't supposed to survive this long. That means we're already rewriting the rules." She turned to Kofi, her gaze unwavering. "Let's finish this." The plan was simple. Lure Honorable Kwaku to the shipping yard, expose his crimes using the video footage Kofi had secretly uploaded to multiple secure servers, and end his reign of terror, one way or another. They'd leak just enough evidence to bait him, revealing they had more that could destroy his empire. Sepho's ego wouldn't allow him to ignore it. And sure enough, he arrived. 3 black SUVs rolled into the yard like predators circling prey. Armed men spilled out, their faces emotionless behind dark sunglasses, weapons drawn. Then, stepping out of the central SUV, came Honorable Kwaku himself. Impeccably dressed, calm as ever, as if this was just another business meeting. Kofi stepped forward, heart pounding. "It's over, Sepho." Sepho's lips curled into a smug smile. "You think you've won? I am a city boy. You can't kill what controls the streets, the police, the government. You're just flies buzzing around the fire." Kofi's fingers tightened around the detonator hidden in his pocket. "Maybe. But even a fly can sting before it dies." Sepho laughed, a cold, hollow sound. "You don't have the guts." He motioned to his men. "Kill them." Gunfire erupted. Kofi dove behind a rusted container, bullets sparking against metal. Selom and Yo returned fire, their shots wild but desperate. ESI flanked aside, moving with sharp precision, her eyes filled with fierce determination. The battle was chaotic, loud, and short-lived. Selom took a hit to the shoulder but kept firing. Yo was grazed by a bullet, blood staining his shirt, but he pressed on. They fought not with the skill of soldiers but with the fury of the hunted, refusing to die quietly. Kofi saw his chance. Amid the smoke and screams, Sepho stood exposed, backing orders, confident even in the face of gunfire. Kofi stepped out from cover, his hands trembling but steady enough. He aimed, finger hovering over the trigger. But he didn't pull it. Instead, he pressed the detonator. The explosion ripped through the yard, a fire roared that consumed everything in its path. The blast knocked Kofi backward, the world spinning in heat and light. When he opened his eyes, the sky was a hazy blur, smoke rising in thick plumes. Sefa was gone. Later, after the sirens faded and the fires died, Kofi stood amidst the ruins. Siloam was alive, clutching his bleeding shoulder. Yor limped but grinned weakly, blood streaked down his face. ESI stood tall, a survivor's fire still burning in her eyes. They had lost so much. But they had won something greater. Freedom. As the sun climbed higher, washing away the shadows, Kofi whispered to himself, "We are still here." And sometimes, that was enough.